This man thought he got away with something terrible he did as a kid, but he was wrong. After Derek ignored the boy in the street asking him for 1 penny, he went home, but he always felt a bit strange about their interactions. Then he went into the attic and found his old yearbook. While flipping through, he found a photo that would haunt him forever. When he was younger, him and his friends were bullies, and they had done something unspeakable to a boy. After beating him, Derek and his friends threw him in the river without a second thought. The boy never showed up to class the next day, but Derek and his friends assumed that he moved away. How was it possible that the boy Derek bullied years ago was the same boy asking him for a penny in the street now? Even though Derek grew up to be a successful businessman, he held the yearbook in his hands, horrified at how his past had come back to haunt him. Within the next few days, Derek took out his life savings. He brought the bag of money out to the boy and said, "Here's every penny I have. Now please leave me alone." But the ghost boy just looked at him blankly. Then in an instant, his face turned into a terrifying smile. He said, "No, mister, that's not all," as the ghost boy reached into Derek's chest and pulled out his heart.
My mother-in-law tampered with my birth control, resulting in me getting pregnant 3 months postpartum. My husband, 22 male, and I, 20 female, welcomed our daughter into the world 18 weeks ago. She's a darling baby and really pretty easy as far as newborns go, except for one. She wasn't a son. My in-laws were obsessed with the idea of us having a son, to the point that they denied she was a girl up until the moment she was born. Why? Because the bloodline follows the father. If you don't have a son, our family name will die out. The day they came to visit in the hospital, my in-laws asked when we would be trying for another baby. We kind of just laughed it off, but my mother-in-law got more insistent, straight up telling us, "Y'all need to try for a boy." Over the next month or two, the conversation about us having another baby sort of tapers off into little comments every now and again. Around this time, mother-in-law started coming.
I have a 9-year-old daughter who I named after my late grandmother, Annabelle, and I'm currently pregnant. If I'm having a girl, I want to name her after my other grandmother, Rose. My sister got pregnant about 5 months before me and says she wants to name her baby Rose. I said our kids can share the name, but she says I already have Annabelle and could have named her Annabelle Rose, but passed up on the chance. So now I can't have Rose. I told her I'll look for something else, but reserve the right to use Rose if I want to. Then I fell in love with the name Rosalie. It honors my late grandmother, my boyfriend loves it, and it won't piss off my sister. A couple of weeks later, my sister gives birth and announces her daughter's name is Rosalie. I am beyond upset because now she's trying to snatch both names from me. My mom calls me to say she knew my sister was planning to do this and hopes I'm not upset because this means I can take the original name I wanted, which was Rose. But I told my mom I'm sticking with Rosalie. She said it's impractical because both Rosalies will have the same surname. My sister is a single mom and my boyfriend will be taking my last name. My sister then calls me to say I'm an inconsiderate prick and that I'm being petty. She can name her kid whatever she wants and I can't monopolize the name. I said true, so by that same logic, I can use Rosalie.
Story of the time I helped my friend propose to his girlfriend in high school. We will name him Steve. So this was the dynamic of our friend group. Me, Steve, his girlfriend, and my best friend at the time. We'll name my best friend at the time Kate. I'm just going to refer to his girlfriend as his girlfriend. Anyway, Steve and his girlfriend were dating for a while. He was a senior and she was a junior. Their relationship was pretty toxic, not gonna lie. They talked about moving in together, they talked about having kids together, so they were pretty serious. Even though they were serious though, their parents wouldn't let them date. So the only time they could see each other was in school. Anyway, he decided he wanted to make a really big poster that said, "Will you marry me?" and hang it on a wall in school. So Steve and my best friend at the time, I forget what I named her, they stayed up really late one night making a poster. I forget why, but I couldn't go for some reason. But I met them at school really early the next day at like 7. Mind you, school started at like 8:30. And we find the perfect spot to hang the poster. All the way in the back of the school by the locker rooms in between the girls' and the boys' bathroom. So his girlfriend comes in, sees the poster, cries, says yes. But they broke up a few weeks later.
Has anyone ever tried to talk to you in a public bathroom? Once a young girl went into a public bathroom and heard from the stall next to hers, "Shall we put on the red vest?" She got scared, ran off, and called the police. 2 officers arrived. One went in and heard the same voice asking, "Shall we put on the red vest?" The officer outside heard her reply, "Okay, put it on." Suddenly, a loud scream, then a thump. The second officer opened the door to check on his partner, then found her head rolling on the ground and blood all the way down her back, making it look like she was wearing a red vest. In Japanese urban legend, the Akamanto is a ghost who haunts bathrooms, specifically female bathrooms. He wears a red cape and hides his face with a white mask. If he chooses you, he will ask you if you want to wear a red vest or a blue vest. If you say red, he will chop your head off. If you say blue, he will grab you by the neck until your face turns blue and you suffocate. If you try to ask for a third color, the floor will open up and a pair of pale hands will reach up and drag you to hell.
Part 2 of how I found out that my boyfriend was sleeping with his stepsister. Continuing on with the story, I saw videos of him sleeping with somebody. At first, I didn't know who the girl was because she went no face, no case. And of course, I was going to look at the video just to find out who the girl was. I mean, I was mad, so I really didn't care about anything else about finding out who it was. And I realized that it was his stepsister's room. Again, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then a couple videos later, it was a video of them making out, so I was just like, okay, it has to be her. I logged out of his Snap, and 30 minutes later, he texted me and said, hey, did you log into my Snap? I said, yeah, haha, I didn't mean to. Then I said, so was it good? Even though I saw the videos, he literally never admitted to it. After he found out that I knew, he blocked me on literally everything, didn't break up with me, just blocked me on everything and hasn't said a word to me since. His mom ended up texting me and was like she was very disappointed in me, so he had obviously told her some lies. His stepsister and all his family ended up blocking me on everything too. Again, I'm not sure what he told them, but I'm pretty sure they all hate me now. So
Storytime of how I caught my teacher naked. By the way, this is not my story, this is from Anonymous. So my whole class in 9th grade went skating. We were having a lot of fun and it was going normal. Afterwards, we went into the buses. When I sat on the bus, I realized I forgot my bag. I ran back inside into the women's locker room. When I went inside, it was just me, but then I saw a teacher. A male teacher. He was around his mid-30s. When I saw him, he was standing in just a towel. He was showering in the women's locker room for no reason. He asked me what I was doing there, and I said I forgot my backpack and that I was going to miss the bus. He then said if I stayed with him, then he would drive me back to school. So I did. I sat outside his shower, and me and him were just talking back and forth. Then when he was done showering, he walked out fully naked. He then changed right in front of me, and I was fine with it. I mean, I like seeing naked bodies. Follow for part 2.
Part 2 of how I found out that my sister was trying to kill me. Continuing on with the story, after I read what I read in her diary, I decided it was best to keep it to myself. So about a month and a half later, I start to think to myself, and I'm like, okay, maybe she's not actually gonna do it. Y'all, I don't know why, but I was literally not scared that my sister was, like, about to kill me. So about 2.5 months after I read what I read in her diary, she calls me into her room and in this fakest voice ever goes, Sissy, why are you being so distant from me? I just looked at her like she was crazy. Then she goes, I know you read my diary. At that exact moment, she looked psycho. I don't know what I was thinking, but right after she said that, my reflex was to knock her out. So I knocked her out, then I stomped on her head. I called my mom into the room and read her the diary, or whatever the heck my sister put in there. Mind you, while I'm reading my mom this diary, she's still knocked out on the floor. My mom then continues to say she's going to put her in a mental hospital. So to this day, my sister's in a mental hospital, and if you're listening to this and you ever get out, please don't kill me. I'm actually living an amazing life right now.
Storytime about the most outrageous thing I saw working as a waitress. A guy came in with his date one night, and throughout the evening, he was the picture of courtesy and good manners. I appreciated it, but didn't delude myself that I was the source and figured he was just in a good mood because the date was going well. He was certainly in a celebratory mood because he was sparing no expense. He asked for our highest quality wine, she got our most expensive entree, and he even ordered one of every appetizer for her to sample when she made a remark that she was having trouble deciding. It was a real feast. So the evening starts wrapping up and I get their check. I asked if they'd be paying together or separate, and she starts to say separate, but he makes a big deal of saying, oh, are you kidding me? Together, definitely together. You never have to pay when you're with me, babe. Then he slides me his card. I get everything sorted and bring out the receipt. It's almost a $300 bill. He doesn't even blink and makes a big show of leaving a $100 tip. He thanks me for my service and emphasizes what a lovely night they've had. A tip that size is exceptional, so I thanked him profusely. He said there's no need and goes on to say how underappreciated waitstaff are and says, don't plan to tip, don't eat out, you know? Looking at the mesmerized girl the whole time and not giving me a glance. After that, he helps her into her coat and they go off. However, not even a few minutes later, he comes back and what he says leaves me speechless.
I've been 100% financially independent from my parents since the day I graduated college. I have a sister who is about a decade older than me, and my parents promised each of us a set amount of money towards our weddings. My sister used this money to have a big, beautiful wedding, and now it's my turn to get married. But my parents have admitted that they gave away the money they had saved for my wedding to my sister. My sister, a mother of one, had a series of health problems and had to freeze her eggs if she ever wanted to have another child. She didn't have the money and only had a few weeks before her hysterectomy, so she asked my parents for the $13,000, which they obviously gave her. I know I sound selfish for prioritizing my wedding over her fertility, but she was 36 when she got the diagnosis. There was no telling how long it would take for her health to recover, and it would be years before they could even afford supporting another infant. I knew she would never have the means to use those eggs before she was 40, and she has made it very clear that she wouldn't want to have an infant at that age. In my opinion, she acted in panic and wanted a safety net that she knew she would never use. But I'm still upset that now I won't be able to have much of a wedding because I've been counting on the funds my parents had promised. I'm not upset that they gave it to her, but I am upset that they gave it to her knowing nothing would come of it. They traded my wedding day for her brief peace of mind. So, am I overreacting? Am I the asshole?
This man thought he got away with something terrible he did as a kid, but he was wrong. Wunter was a rich businessman. Let's just call him Derek. Derek was walking home from work when a boy ran up to him and started pulling on his suit. He said, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek shouted, "Leave me alone," and walked away. The boy was left outside freezing in the cold. The next day, the same boy was standing on the street and said, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek was annoyed. He threw a penny at him and said, "Here, there you go, now leave me alone." But he could have never known who this boy actually was. This time, when he got home, he started feeling uneasy. Something about these interactions felt a bit weird to him. He went to bed, tried to fall asleep, but as soon as he closed his eyes, he heard a voice right up against his ear say, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek jumped out of bed. His wife told him to calm down, so he tried to. There was no one else in the room, but something was wrong. Derek began to remember what he did. When he was a young boy, him and his friends had done something horrible. Terrified, he went up to the attic and found his old yearbook. Then, flipping through the pages, he saw a photo. Derek thought, how was this possible? He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Follow for part 2.
Part 2 to my homophobic family kicking me out of the house and replacing me with my best friend. So I cannot believe the audacity of my family literally replacing me with Katie. Not only was she just over there for movie night, but they had actually moved her into my room, the room that I was raised in. I felt so much fury that I had to walk around the neighborhood for a while just to calm down. But eventually I just started to walk back to the house that I was staying at. Once I got in, Katie messaged me. She apologized for being such a bad friend, but then she said she had a secret. And she came out to me as bisexual and begged me not to tell my family. She felt like my family was her own and she didn't want to get kicked out. I was so frustrated that she was keeping the same secret that I had in my house, but she's getting to actually stay at my house. It has been a full year now and she is still with them to this day. But thankfully, I'm now living with my boyfriend and his family has accepted me as bisexual. I am honestly so much happier and better off. If you guys have a story that you'd like to share, follow me and DM me.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. 2 boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
I was raised by parents who believe religiously and just culturally in rigid gender roles. Dad should work, mom should stay home and raise the kids. I'm the only girl and I have 3 brothers. Because of their expectation, I would just get married and stay home and raise kids. They never valued my education. They never valued my educational achievements or emphasized things beyond domestic skill. I'm the second youngest, and by the time I was in high school, my 2 older brothers had gone to the college of their choice, with my parents covering full tuition, books, and off-campus apartment and other living expenses. They eventually did the same for my younger brother, and I was told I wasn't allowed to apply for college. I did so in secret and got accepted with a partial scholarship. I didn't tell them I was moving out until a week before I left. With essentially nothing, the only things I had were things my friends had given to me that their parents bought for them for college. I took engineering and had to work, take on a debt, and struggle. My parents and I have barely spoken in years. I'm married now and expecting our first child, and they asked to meet up. We met at a park and they said they were sorry if they caused me pain, but would like a relationship now.
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister, and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, "You need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night." And I look at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like, I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night." Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, No. He's like, "No, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her." So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only
Am I the asshole for refusing to let my stepdaughter use my daughter's wedding dress? I met my stepdaughter Zoe 2.5 years ago, and I married her father less than 5 months ago. It was a small and private celebration since that's what we felt was the best thing to do since I'm still grieving my daughter Lauren, who passed away from sepsis at the age of 26. She was doing okay and was getting ready for her wedding that was supposed to happen the same month she passed away. We still don't know what went wrong. I took most of her belongings, including her wedding dress. We bought it together and she put a lot of her own touches on it. Although it hurt to look at it, I made sure it's safe. My stepdaughter Zoe is younger than Lauren. She's 23. We're not very close and distance is one of the reasons why. The issue started when Zoe visited to talk about her wedding in April. We were talking about wedding dresses and she suddenly brought up Lauren's wedding dress. I asked her what about it and she said she saw it several times and it got stuck on her mind. She asked me if she could see it and I let her. She then said she'd like to wear it at her wedding. I felt uneasy. I told her I wasn't sure that was a good idea. She told me it's fine. She'll have to change a few things in it so that it can fit her size and style, but this is why I had a hard time accepting.
Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with a 17-year-old girl. So when summer started, I started working at this new job. And I had a really good connection with one of my coworkers. And he was 28 years old. So we started talking, but I would get mad at him a lot because he would ignore my messages asking to hang out. And on top of that, every time that we got done with work, we would all go sit and eat, and he would sit next to this one girl. And by the way, she was 17. And I could see them flirting all the time. Well, finally, once summer ended, she moved away. And then I felt like I had a real chance to start dating him. So we started hanging out a lot and hooking up a lot. After a few months, I started taking our relationship serious. Well, apparently not for him because there was this girl on his phone that he had been texting a lot. So weirdly enough, after that, I get a DM from the girl that he would always flirt with at work. And she asked me if I was dating him. And I said, yeah. And then she goes, oh, well, he's been texting me a lot. So then I blocked her and went and hooked up with one of his friends that night, like for part 2.
Story of the time I let a stranger drive me home. Disclaimer, do not do this. So at the time, I was either 15 or 16 and I worked at a shoe store. I became really close friends with the people that I worked with and they were a little bit older than me. And Uber was definitely a thing back then, but nobody ever used it. And a lot of my friends would use taxis, but they were pretty expensive, so I was not trying to get one. My parents were out of town, and my friend that was going to drive me home also worked at the mall, but she ended up going home sick, so she couldn't take me home anymore. So I start asking my coworkers if anybody would be able to take me home. But they all lived super far away from me in the opposite direction, so they all said no. The mall closed at 9:30, and we usually got out of work at 10. But I ended up sitting in the waiting area until 11 o'clock, just hoping that somebody would be able to pick me up. A few security guards came up to me and asked me why am I still in the mall, and I told them I'm waiting for a ride, so they let me stay. Mind you, I was sitting by an exit. So I see this cute guy walking towards the exit, and I talked to him a few times because he also works in the mall. He was like, "You're still here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have a ride." And he was like, "I got you."
Do you know the dark origins behind the fairy tales we all grew up hearing? In this series, I'm going to draw each fairy tale and tell you the original scary stories they were based on. Today, we're going to talk about Rapunzel. So in the original, Rapunzel's dad stole herbs from the witch's garden for his wife, and when he got caught, he agreed to give Rapunzel to the witch. Rapunzel is then trapped in the witch's tower, until one day, a prince hears her singing in the tower, so she lets her hair down. This is the part we all grew up hearing about, but things take a much darker turn from here. The prince visits Rapunzel in secret, and the witch only finds out when Rapunzel gets pregnant and can't hide it anymore. In a fit of rage, the witch cuts Rapunzel's hair and uses it to lure the prince back into the tower. There, she throws him off and into a bush of thorns, which blinds him. After that, the prince ends up wandering around the country for years. But then Rapunzel, who's now a mother to twins, eventually finds him. When they reunite, Rapunzel's tears heal the prince's eyes, so I guess it kind of is a happy ending. Though it did take a lot of intense turns to get there. Let me know which fairy tale you want me to cover next, and follow if you want to see more.
Story time, my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So a little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and the one night my friends and I were playing Truth or Dare. Well, a little bit into the game, my friends dared me to download Tinder and message the first 5 guys that I saw. And what do you know, the last guy that I saw on there was my gym teacher. So obviously I messaged him and I was like, hey, OMG, it's blah 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 from your 3rd period class. And obviously I wasn't expecting him to answer, but he did, and he was like, oh, this is weird, how are you? So after that, my friends were like, oh, okay, like it's time to delete it. So I pretended that I did, and when they left, I started messaging him more. So we had been messaging that whole week, and one thing led to another. Next thing I knew, he was sneaking me out of my house at 2 a.m. And he was like 32, so he wasn't that old. Well, for the next month, we were going to restaurants that were like an hour away. Almost every weekend, he would rent out a hotel for us. Well, the one night his wife was supposed to be out with some friends, so he invited me over like for part 2.
Around a year ago, my husband anxiously sat me down and told me he had discovered he had a long-lost daughter. According to him, he had an ex he got pregnant as a teenager, but she moved away before she started showing and without telling him. She gave birth and kept his daughter a secret from him. Eventually, she put Kat up for adoption. Kat now tracked him down and wanted to get to know him. As I am unable to conceive on my own, I was very enthusiastic and encouraging of them meeting. I asked him about DNA testing or speaking to the mother or adoptive parents. He told me all of that would come in due time, but based on the details she shared with him, he was 90% sure she was his biological daughter. Their first few visits together were private, but eventually we had a big dinner at my house. My husband has seen Kat numerous times since then, both with and without me present. About a week ago, a young man I've never met before messaged me on Facebook. He was Kat's ex-boyfriend and he wanted me to know that this was the woman my husband had been sleeping with. He must have misunderstood Kat's relationship with my husband. When I asked my husband about it, he started crying. He thought I went through his phone and found the text messages between him and Kat. Messages when she was in character. Which is how he segued into telling me that they're in a fake, incestuous daddy-daughter relationship.
When you go to sleep tonight, don't do what she did. Once there was a young woman named Alicia who moved into a very old house with her parents, but she could have never expected the horrifying things that this would lead to. After living in this house for a few weeks, things started becoming strange. Alicia noticed she was becoming weaker and feeling sick. Pretty soon she couldn't leave her bed and would sleep for most of the day. The doctors came to examine her and everyone wanted to find out what this mysterious sickness was, but no one had any answers. Until one day Alicia passed away while sleeping. Then after her funeral, her mother came home and with a broken heart began cleaning her room. That's when she noticed something strange about Alicia's pillow. There were 2 small red stains. She picked it up and realized the pillow was unusually heavy, so she called her husband to go look at it with her. Then Alicia's mother felt something inside the pillow move. Her father opened the pillow and took all the feathers out. There they saw something crawl out. It was a monstrous black spider. Night after night, as Alicia lay in bed, this huge spider had been slowly drinking all her blood through her pillow.
Story of the time I got caught bullying someone. So when I was little, me and all my neighbors would hang out on our street. My one neighbor that I saw the most was awful, to say the least. And everybody on my street called her the boss because she made everybody do exactly what she wanted at all times. And she definitely bullied all of us into being her little minions that did everything she said. So another one of my neighbors, who was a boy, who was a decent amount of years older than me, came outside to play with us, which was kind of unusual just because he was so much older than us. And Miss Bossy Pants did not like that he was going to play with us. So she had instructed me, which sounds very weird because we were young, but that's the only word that I know how to use because that's what she always did, to tell him that nobody wanted to play with him and that he should go back home. And of course, his mom was standing right behind me. I vividly remember her screaming at me and I cried and went home. Then the girl neighbor was like, "Why would you?"
Storytime of how I found out that my boyfriend was sleeping with his stepsister. As crazy as it sounds, I literally just found the whole situation funny. So I was dating this kid, let's just name him Mark, for about 1.5 years. He had a bunch of step-siblings and they were all younger except one girl that was 16. She was very protective over my boyfriend, but I honestly kind of thought that was just normal, you know? She would always make up some strange excuse why she had to hang out with me and my boyfriend, so we honestly never could hang out alone. They were siblings, so I would never think anything of it. I honestly thought they were just really close. Then one day she said something really weird and it made me start to think. I seen him slap her butt a couple of times. I kept my opinions to myself at first because, you know, he's my boyfriend and I didn't want to start an argument, but then I said something. His reply was, "Stop overthinking, she's just my sister." Okay, well if she's just your sister, why are you smacking her butt? Anyways, one night he wasn't replying to me for like 3 hours and I thought he was asleep. So I logged into his Snap to spam cute pictures of me and his memories. And I found videos. Disturbing videos. I'm running out of time, like for part 2.
Part 2 about how my boyfriend was cheating on me with a 17-year-old girl. So like I said, I hooked up with his friend that night, but I didn't tell him for a couple months because he would always say that we weren't dating, even though we were basically in a relationship. So we were doing really good until around Christmas time. So after he gave me my gifts, which was socks and a candle, he left for Massachusetts. I don't know if I said that right. And a month before this, I had unblocked the girl that he was flirting with. So weirdly enough, after he left, she DM'd me, basically asking if I was still dating him again. And I was like, yeah, why? And she goes, well, I need to tell you something. He actually took my virginity, and he's been sending me a lot of gifts, like a record player and albums, and we've been talking on the phone every night. So when I confronted him about it, he said he felt bad for her because he took her virginity. So after that, I confessed to hooking up with his best friend and called him a child predator. So I blocked him, and then he would still try to get in contact with me.
Part 2 of how my mom was putting my dad's ashes in me and my brother's dinner. Continuing on with the story, after I see her literally pouring my dad's ashes into our mashed potatoes, and I mean, this lady literally sees me staring at her pouring the ashes into our mashed potatoes, and she, doesn't even say anything. I was just, a little shocked. So after that, I just kept quiet until after dinner, and I was mad at my brother that night, so I just let him eat the mashed potatoes. So after dinner, I went up to my mom and asked her why she was putting our dad's ashes in our food. And her exact words were, "Your father was a bad man. He wasn't meant to be here." I said, "What does that have to do with you putting his ashes in our dinner?" She goes, "It will just cleanse your soul. The witches told me to feed my children's father to them." Bishwa? I ended up telling my brother, but then me and him decided not to ever say anything ever again because we don't want her little spirits telling them to do the same thing with us, so...
This is why I don't tell anyone where I live. There was once a boy who asked his single father for a bedtime story, so the father told him. There was once a boy named Colby who made friends with another boy online called Helper23. On Colby's birthday, Helper23 wanted to give him a present in real life, so Colby gave him his home address, where he lives with his mom, his dad, and his little brother. But then Colby started to feel a bit weird about giving his address to a stranger online. The next night, he thought he had to tell his parents about it. He called out to his dad but got no reply, then found both his parents killed and a man wearing a dark hoodie holding a knife in the hallway. As Colby started to beg for his life, he hears his little brother crying in the next room. The intruder then strangles Colby and leaves the house with Colby's baby brother. The boy then looks up at his father and asks, "Why did the intruder take the baby?" To which his father just calmly smiled and said, "I've always wanted to be a father."
This is my strangest encounter with a nail client story. So when I first started doing nails, I didn't have a lot of clients. I decided to run a promotion where you would get $15 off your first set of nails. And I was only charging between $35 and $55 to begin with, so it was already cheap. I would only take one nail client a day just because I had school and I would take a lot of hours to do nails. A girl messaged me and had made an appointment for 4 o'clock. So I had my friends from school come over and wait with me there until the girl came just to make sure that she wasn't, a serial killer. So 4:30 comes along, she says she's running late, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30. Finally, 8 o'clock, she texts me and says that she's outside. She smelled like a mixture of BO and marijuana. I finished doing her nails around 12 o'clock at night just to find out that she didn't even text her ride to come yet and she lived an hour away. I told her it was fine and she can make herself comfortable while she waits. She proceeds to lay in my bed.
I got caught sleeping with my teacher part 2. So my school had this abandoned basement, and that's where we were supposed to meet after lunch. So yes, I had to skip class. It was a little sketchy for me, but honestly at this point, I was ready to do anything. Well, the day comes, we meet, and that person tells me what I need to do in order to get my grades up. When that person told me that, my heart dropped. I honestly thought they were going to tell me to clean their house or do their groceries or something, but not do the dirty with them. Well, after 20 minutes of trying to convince me, I said yes. We weren't able to do it right there and then, but we did set up a time that same day after school. While I leave, I tell my friends what that person wants me to do. They asked me if I was going to do it, and I said yes. There's so many details to this story, but long story short, mid doing the dirty, the principal busted us. He got fired, ended up going to jail. I was in big trouble, but I did explain what happened and that he told me what I had to do to get my grades up. My parents were very disappointed. I wasn't allowed to go back to school, so I got homeschooled.
Storytime, the biggest lie I ever got away with as a teenager. So my sister and I were going to spend the weekend at my stepdad's, and I asked my parents if I could bring a friend. My dad said he didn't care, and my stepmom said no. And my parents were really strict. But obviously I did not listen. So I invited my friend, and her parents were also really strict. So we came up with this elaborate plan that I would ask her parents and tell them that it was a surprise for her. And they believed it. So the day comes whenever we're supposed to leave to go up to my stepdad's. So, we get off the bus, walk to my house, and my stepmom was asleep because she worked night shifts. So I was able to sneak my friend through the house to my bedroom. Little did she know she was going to have to hide in the closet. So my stepmom came in and needed to borrow a pair of socks for work. And I was literally guarding the closet with my life. And she goes, "Get away from the closet, you're acting so suspicious. What's in there?" For part 2. By the way, Stacy and Candace, if you see this, my bad.
Part 2 of catching my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So my best friend tells me all these things that my neighbor was saying about me, obviously. And I got really upset, so I went home and I just started to cry. Because for some reason I felt like when I was younger, every one of my friends' parents hated me. And I never really knew why. I was always the type of person to let my friends do whatever they want and encourage them in doing whatever they want, whether that's breaking the rules or following the rules. So I mean, I guess that could be something, but I'm just being a supportive friend, sorry, I got off topic. So when I told my mom, she was like, okay, come with me, I'm gonna knock on her door. And I was like, heck no, I do not feel like dealing with this. Mom, you deal with it. So she calls her up on the phone, puts her on speakerphone, confronts her about the situation, and this lady starts going on about how she loves me like I'm her own child, saying that I was never a bad influence on her daughter, and that she actually wanted me to hang out with her daughter more. That's not what she was saying. That bagel said.
This is why you should never watch TV late at night. Once a mother and a father decided they needed a break, so they planned a night out together, and they left their 2 children with their babysitter at home. Everything was going good, the children were well behaved, and the babysitter was just sitting around while watching the kids, but eventually she decided that she wanted to watch some TV. It turns out she couldn't watch it downstairs because they didn't have cable downstairs, so she called the parents and asked if she could watch TV with the kids in their room upstairs. The parents agreed. They were about to hang up the phone when the babysitter had one final request. As she entered the parents' bedroom, she asked if she could cover up their large clown statue with a cloth or a blanket. She said it was making her very uncomfortable. The phone line went dead for a second. Then the mother said over the phone, "Take the children and get out of the house. We don't have a clown statue." As the babysitter turned around, she saw the corners of the clown's mouth widen into a smile.
Storytime of how I figured out that my sister was trying to kill me. So me and my sister were best friends when we were little, but she was a very, very jealous person. So years and years go on, but her jealousy seems to start to grow. So I never really thought about it until I found out that she really wanted me dead. But throughout the years, she would do little things to get me hurt. For example, she pushed me off the top of our treehouse and I ended up breaking my arm. But every time I got hurt, my family would baby me and she would get even more mad. So at this time, we're about 16 years old, and I had to go in her room to get her laundry. And under her laundry, I found her diary, or journal, or whatever you call it. I was flipping through the pages, I found out some interesting and crazy things. Then one was named The Perfect Murder. What an original name. She had this big, huge dresser in her room. She went into a lot of detail about how she was going to kill me. But it stated that she was going to push the dresser on top of me and jump on it until I, and scream for help. I'm running out of time for part 2.
Okay, part 2. Sorry for keeping you guys waiting. So she literally pushes me out of the way, goes and looks in the closet, and stands there for a whole ass minute. And me, I'm over here having an anxiety attack. My sister's looking at me, making hand gestures, basically saying, what is she looking at? And I'm literally sitting there and I get to peek in the closet and my friend is not there. And I'm like, what the fuck? Where did she go? And then she starts moving things around in the closet. So she didn't see anything and she goes to walk out of my room and she goes, you guys are so weird. And I run over to the closet where the fuck is she? And she pops out of this box that is literally in plain sight and goes, is she gone yet? And trust me, I know this doesn't sound like a big thing to get away with, but whenever you have strict parents and they're looking for somebody in literally a 5-foot space, oh honey, this was a big deal for me. And tonight is going to be the night that my stepmom actually sees this.
This is why not everything is as it seems. One night at around 4 a.m., Tommy woke up screaming. He dreamt of a creature that somehow got into his room. It had a short, fat body, long arms, sharp claws, and red eyes. In his dream, this creature looked directly at him as it killed all of his loved ones. How did this creature find Tommy? By mimicking the voice of Tommy's father. As it ripped Tommy's mother's heart out, it said that it had to trick him because it can't enter without his permission. Tommy woke up with chills all over his body. Luckily, he heard the voice of his mother, who he thought must have just woken up. His mother's voice came in from the hallway. Tommy, I heard you were screaming. Are you alright? I got you a glass of water. Do you want it? Tommy, without thinking much, replied, sure, come in. And as those words left his mouth, he finally took in his surroundings and remembered he had just started college, which meant he moved out of his mother's house 3 weeks ago. This is why you should never talk to strangers. According to Japanese legend, Kuchisake Onna was once a beautiful woman who cheated on her husband. When her husband found out about it, he became full of rage and sliced the corners of her mouth from ear to ear. After she died, she came back as a vengeful spirit who covers her scars with a surgical mask, so she looks entirely normal otherwise. She usually wanders the streets at night with a large pair of scissors or a knife. If you're unlucky enough to be chosen as her victim, she will ask you, "Am I pretty?" If you answer no, she will cut you in half. If you say yes, she will cut your mouth from ear to ear just like her too. But you can survive her by answering her question with something else, like, maybe, I don't know, am I pretty? You can also buy some time by throwing money or hard candies at her, which she will stop to pick up. But others say that if she's chosen you, she will show up to your bedroom and kill you in your sleep. So remember, especially since everyone is wearing a mask nowadays, be careful who you talk to.